program is starting to gain some speed in Canada that actually I'll be sponsoring up here. It's the Callaway Clubs for Kids program, and it's basically going into the schools and educating the children about a little bit about golf, trying to generate some interest at the ground level, I guess, and have and maybe educate a little bit as to where you can get a lesson, where you can go, and where you can hit balls.
Yeah, I've heard that program. It's a popular.
Yeah, it seems
program.
to be. I mean, I was just pitched on it a little while ago, and when I read it, I thought, I always wanted to give back a little bit, and that's probably the best thing I've seen in a long time. So it takes initiatives like that to, I think, break down some of the barriers that exist, whether they're financial, whether they're perceived barriers that aren't really there. But access to golf courses and access to the equipment are the two biggest things. If it was free and we had a national program where anybody who wanted to play golf could put up their hand and say, yeah, I'd like to try that out, and they could grab a set of clubs with balls and gloves and shoes and all those things and make their way off to a golf course in the area and play golf with the right instruction and all the right opportunity, I think you quadruple your numbers.
Access is quite an issue, isn't it? Because I think when you take a look at the cost of golf compared to the cost of hockey or the cost of baseball and some of the other sports, figure skating, what have you, a set of clubs for a junior golfer is no more than a set of skates, a pair of skates.
Yeah.
So when you take a look at the cost, I mean, it is going to be a barrier to sport for a certain number of people, regardless of what the cost is.
Yeah. But I think the cost is underestimated sometimes because, if you take two children and locally say, listen, you can play at Stonehill or you can play at the Idlewild. Idlewild's a private golf course where you're going to get the best conditions, the best tutelage, the best of everything, and Stonehill is a public track where you're not going to get that. So it serves its purpose, but certainly for somebody growing up, I grew up in the 8th hole of the Idlewild. My father was doing well enough to put any club I wanted in my hands and give me access to would travel with them, and I'd play golf courses all over the world, and I'd have great equipment, and I had every opportunity to be successful. So, does that second child have the same opportunity as the first? I guess in the case of a Rory McIlroy and somebody who's Patrick Harrington, where they're two major champions of late, and their fathers weren't, probably had a tough time, putting food on the table over their lives, and these guys can still get there. Who knows what each individual can point to? I don't know what really helped those guys out, what didn't. Certainly there were probably a lot of people helping them. But access to good golf and to the proper training, unfortunately in golf still only comes for the elite. And hockey, I don't think you can say that. I think you can pick up a sponsor if you're on a AAA team, and a lot of people will help support the costs, and people will pitch in. And if that kid can skate and put the puck in the net, I don't know too many that didn't get there because their parents couldn't afford it.
Right.
So I still think that exists in golf, unfortunately.
Did you ever have, of course, you're at the Idlewild, it was a private course. The people that you've talked to over the years, and even on the tour, you would have talked to a lot of people on the tour, and you would have talked about your early days of golf.
Yeah.
Were they accepted at most courses by the adults? Did you ever found that while the adults will talk about wanting to promote the game with the juniors, that a lot of adults didn't really want to see kids on the course?
I think back in the day when I was doing it, it was hit and miss, probably more so than not, but there certainly was an element of any club that would want to restrict access and saw juniors as a nuisance. I think if you were looking at it properly, you were realizing that the future of the game is sitting right under your nose, and sooner or later you'd be looking for members at that golf club, and maybe you wanted to cultivate a little bit more of those juniors to be contributing members in the future. But a lot of it, I think, went back to how you conducted yourself. I think that myself and a few other guys around the Idlewild were very, certainly we had our moments, maybe a little bit of club throwing here and there, and I've been known to have a bit of a temper, but I think at the end of the day I respected the rules and the history of the game, and certainly was somebody that the members got a kick out of, watching this little 11-year-old guy, hit balls until his fingers were bleeding on the range and start winning tournaments at 13. And then from that point on, I think when I proved myself in the golf world, I would say I was nothing but incredibly accepted and and he certainly got all the support I could have gotten to be successful from a variety of members there, from junior golf to being sponsored as a professional. A lot of guys chipped in and helped me out with costs, and so my father wouldn't have to bear all of that, which he could have, but it was the idea I wanted to do it on my own. So great support on my end, but I'm sure I earned it. And but even if you weren't a scratch and you weren't winning tournaments, if you were somebody who conducted yourself with the proper etiquette on the golf course, I think you're always accepted at any age.
And that's something that parents who are introducing their kids to the game have to make sure they understand that there's a certain protocol on the course.
Yeah.
And as you say, when you're the one responsible for being the referee, it's something that the person has to develop.
Yeah.
Right? Because all the other sports, if you say you get away with a hook, you're going to get away with a hook.
Okay.
Yeah.
Golf's, I think I look at my little guy now, he's 8 years old, and kind of, we're 7 going on 8, and I'm introducing him to the game of golf. It's like it's a 40-chapter book, and he's getting to have a little peek at chapter 1. Where we're still in the preface, we haven't maybe got to chapter 1 yet. At this age, I just want to get him out there, and he watched me win my 6th invite on the weekend, and they started to get an idea of why that was important to me. It might mean nothing to somebody else, but to me, that's history, right? I'm in the record books, and that'll be a tough one to beat. So I've always said that's my Masters. So he sees me prepare for that. Now, I'm not on TV and I didn't win the Masters, but my little guy will look at me and go, "Boy, Dad really worked hard to achieve something." That was important to me. That's more what I want to teach him now than anything. And the fundamentals of the game, he puts a club in his hand, plays 1 or 2 holes with me, and then wants a bag of chips and a Gatorade. But still a great introduction to the sport. Now, I certainly won't force him to be a competitive golfer and try to groom him to be the next Tiger Woods, unless he really wants to do that. I'd be a good father to have to do that. But
you at least want him to enjoy the game, so he
my goal is to introduce him to the game and what it brings to him. And I know that if he sits in that chair in the business world one day, that he's going to need to have a lot of life experiences and a lot of things to fall back on. And the business world is a tough place to be. You got to be a pretty strong-willed individual and have a lot of intestinal fortitude. You got to be able to make decisions under pressure, and you essentially are responsible for, in my case, 50 families, right? There are 50 people that work here that bring home a paycheck, and that is a direct relation as to how their children grow up and what goes on there. So it's a lot of pressure. You represent a manufacturer, and I've got responsibilities in regards to that. So do I look back and think of all the times I studied in school and how that helped me? Frankly, no. I mean, that's the test of school is, if given the challenge of producing a document that is a summary of what you've read, or regurgitating a math formula, can you do that? Different kind of challenge, and that's applicable. But by far the most important thing in your business life is going to be how you respond to adversity. And what game teaches you better principles than golf? Because if I get excited and I lose my temper and I throw my club into the trees, or I break it and I rush off to the next tee shot, chances are I'm going to hit a poor shot that next time. And I'm going to miss that drive, and that's going to cost me another shot, and it's just a snowball effect from there. So, it teaches you pretty early on that the best way to overcome adversity, and it's a game you rarely win at. I mean, most sports are, but in golf, what's your winning percentage? My winning percentage in baseball could be 70%. We don't win the World Series, but it's still a successful year. Golf, you may not win a tournament in your life, and you might not win something. So your winning percentage, for guys like Tiger, maybe 20%. Jack, something similar. For the rest of them, 1%. So you do nothing but deal with failure, relative failure, and it's how you take it. But I think it teaches you how to handle adversity better than anything you could possibly. In sport in general, I don't want to just say golf, but certainly golf for me has been a great catalyst in my business career. And I use the parallels, frankly, all the time in sales meetings. You're trying to get your team riled up, you're trying to explain the scenario, and you can go to that experience that I've had in golf and recite some of those scenarios and the way I felt when I'm coaching these guys, and I think it's very relevant.
How important are coaches for juniors developing to enjoy the game?
A good coach is very important. A bad coach is irrelevant. There are a lot of bad coaches out there.
You coach yourself a lot.
You coach yourself a lot.
In golf.
I think a dynamic player could get through it with bad coaches, as they probably have in all sports. I think if you can get the right combination of player and coach, you know, there's there are examples of that. Jack Nicklaus being one of them, growing up with a mentor, and Tiger with his father. There are those scenarios where it happens. Usually everybody's got some kind of coach, whether it be a life coach or a golf coach. I think in the game of golf, you know, my father was my coach, right? Could he beat me on the golf course pretty early on? No. By the age I was 12 or 13, but he certainly had a lot to teach me about the game. And he was a former professional athlete himself, played pro hockey for many years when it was just the original six, and he was a minor league guy and bounced all over the place. And he understood what it took to be successful. So, you know, when I got off the rails, he was pretty good at getting me back on. And I think my father as a coach for me, and what most good coaches do for their players or their students, is you know, he never let me get too high, and he never let me get too low. He kept me in the middle, made sure I was focused. I think one summer I won something like, I'm going to say it was about 12 events in a row, from junior to amateur golf, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. And you know, in a really nice way, he kind of took me back to reality and pointed out that there was a lot of other things going on out there. And although I was winning some tournaments up in Northern Ontario, there were probably a few in the U.S. and Southern Ontario that I may not have. So, and you know, my college career was kind of beckoning at that time, and you know, so he was pivotal for me. He introduced me to the game, was a mentor. You know, has been a great life coach, and certainly glad he introduced me to the game of golf.
Are there any particular reasons why young people start out in the game and then drop it, like leave? Like hockey, the dropout rate is phenomenal when they get to the age of 12, 13, or 14. But many of them never come back. Like with golf, chances are when they get into their 30s or 40s or 50s, many of them do come back to the game.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them that I grew up with, that I know anyway, I mean, the frequency of play may decrease over time. Now, you go through a lot of phases in your life. You may be at university working 2 jobs and not able to get out to the golf course. You may have just got married and had twins, and your wife's looking at you like you've gone in another direction when you ask her to go to the golf course for the evening. So, you know, I'm fortunate to have a very supportive wife and father and family the whole way through. So, merging from junior to collegiate to professional back to amateur golf, I've been supported along the way. But there's probably a lot of reasons you can get derailed. And the other sports, you know, hockey is just ultra competitiveness, right? You realize pretty quickly whether you're going to be able to continue on that elite path, and if you've got a future. And if you don't, it's not a game for life. You'll end up playing pickup hockey with your buddies on a Friday afternoon, and that's what it is. Golf is a game for life, as I've stated. My father's 82 years old. He's out there right now playing with his buddies, and believe me, he wants to win that $2 Nassau and take money off his chums almost as badly as I wanted to win the invite. So I think golf is I was going to teach my children any game, and I wanted them to adopt something and at least enjoy it. If they weren't passionate about it, but at least enjoy the game. It's golf by far.
We could probably take this entire interview and call it Introduction to Business 101, because there's so many parallels between golf and business, and the whole idea of you've got 18 holes and the preparation you make before you take that tee shot is as important as the swing, and then you know where that tee shot ends up determines the next shot. And I mean, you can really run the parallels, and
you could. There's nothing. There'd be endless scenarios that you can talk about with. I mean, you know, I always teach my guys that work for me and staff on any level is, you know, we deal with the manufacturers. I said we deal with the market. We can only manage what we control, but you personally can do a lot of things to improve, you know, your end of and it's a team. There's 50 individuals. We only succeed when everybody's firing on all cylinders, and that's a tough thing to do. Yeah. But you know, as the dealer, it's my job to make sure and be that coach, right? So I look at some of the mistakes that I've seen my coaches make over the years in a variety of sports, and I try to not be that individual for my team members. And it's tough. You can't get to everybody. I mean, I think it's a lot easier to coach 8 players than it is 50, soon to be 100 employees. But I think you can put systems and processes in place and then have management layers below you that carry those things out. And that's what the business world is. In golf, systems and processes as well. You know, believe me, those guys all have a routine. They all have a way that they want to do things. They are all very finicky and very superstitious about the process. So, and I think in golf, when you think about one shot at a time, don't worry about, you don't like that drive on 15, because if you think if you don't turn it over, it's going to be in the hazard down there, and the wind's blowing out of the left. And if I get caught up on that on number 2, and I'm only 2 holes into the round, then am I really paying attention to the business at hand and what's directly in front of me?
And you can always recover.